This video here should make all the conspiracy theories happy. And I hate to say conspiracy theories. So what I want to do is, before we get into it, before we get any further into the video, before we get started, all right, let me get everybody in here first. All right. Let me wait till we get a few people in here. All right, let's see. All right, let's go. Let's go. Let's get to it. Audio should be decent. No, no cuts. No cuts in the audio. We should be straight right now.
Secret mind control experiments in brothels, weaponized sex dolls, and even CIA magicians. These are
What? Hey, they weaponizing sex dolls out here, bro.
secret mind control experiments in brothels, weaponized sex dolls, and even CIA magicians. These are some of the weirdest things you never knew about the United States Central Intelligence Agency. Fact 1. Did you know that the CIA built an untraceable heart attack gun? While it seems more like something from a James Bond movie, this really was a weapon used by the CIA.
And you know what's crazy? When you hear those conspiracies or the when individuals say stuff like this celebrity was killed by the government or they had some source take them out of here, and then you think to yourself, "Oh man, that can't be true. There's no way possible that these things are true." And then you find out that the CIA invented a fucking heart attack gun, and then when these people are dying from heart attacks, nobody's paying attention to it. Nobody's thinking anything of it. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna start this back up since we have nobody in the stream. Let's try to get some people in here right quick. All right. Let's see. Try to get this motherfucker packed out right quick.
Secret mind control experiments in brothels, weaponized sex dolls, and even CIA magicians. These are some of the weirdest things you never knew about the United States Central Intelligence Agency. Fact 1. Did you know that the CIA built an untraceable heart attack gun? While it seems more like something from a James Bond movie, this really was a weapon used by the CIA. It was a pistol capable of firing a frozen dart full of deadly shellfish toxin. The dart would pierce the skin and then melt in the body, distributing the poison and inducing a heart attack shortly after.
Now, when you hear everyone talk about the quote unquote conspiracies, and you're like, oh man, this person is crazy. There's no way that the government is killing you with a fake heart attack gun and all this type of shit, bro. These motherfuckers really use that shit. It's not I'm gonna tell you what it is, bro. I'm gonna tell you how it happened. Individuals who are part of some of these projects, like Project Bluebeam and Project Blackbird and all these other weird ass shit, these individuals were talking about the things they've been through. There was a push to say, "Oh no, 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 man, no, that shit don't exist." So they were classified or deemed crazy and can't be trusted, and they were irrational and all types of shit. Then years go by, and you find out, nah, bro, they wasn't crazy.
With no way of tracing the murder back to the assassin. It was one of the many reasons Senator Frank Church cited in 1975 as to why the CIA needed greater government oversight. Fact 2. What's the favored sidearm for a CIA agent? Seeing as Senator Church slammed the brakes on the old heart attack gun, it never became standard issue. The general consensus is the Glock 19 and Sig Sauer P226 are the most popular pistols.
Here's how I repurchased.
All right, so we're gonna hit that mute button right there. We're not doing a copyright shit.
Among the CIA's ranks. Simple but effective. Fact 3. Some of the strangest CIA agents were literal house cats. We're talking about one of the CIA's greatest embarrassments, the Acoustic Kitty Project. This $20 million 1960s failure was a plan intended to turn cats into living listening devices to infiltrate the Kremlin by implanting tiny microphones into their ear canals and a radio transmitter in the base of their skulls. The plan failed because, well, as cat owners know, they don't take direction well. Fact 4.
First of all, they do take direction well. They just don't fucking listen to people who don't know how to fucking talk to them. I tell my cat, get the fuck out. Oh, get your ass in your room. And that pregnant bitch go in a goddamn room. She also been bringing me gifts lately. Found a mole yesterday down there by the fucking couch. A couple weeks ago, she brought in a couple birds. About a month or so ago, I caught her chasing a baby rabbit downstairs. The bitch sneaks out the fucking basement windows, then does some weird shit, and then gets animals back in the fucking house. Fucking weirdos.
If cat recorders don't work, what about pigeon cameras? The CIA's Research and Development Division created tiny cameras and lights to be placed into trained pigeons during the Cold War, owing to pigeons' uncanny abilities to always find their way home. No prizes for guessing that this went a lot better than the plot with the cats. Fact 5. Argo actually happened. The Oscar-winning Ben Affleck movie was actually pretty accurate in its telling of the incredible plot to rescue 6 American citizens from a politically unstable Tehran in 1979. The CIA created its own fake movie studio, Studio 6 Productions, and a fake science fiction movie as a pretense to sneak into the country and liberate the trapped Americans. We hope you enjoyed the whimsy of that, because it's all going to get darker from here. Fact 6. The CIA tortured an innocent man because of a typo. Back in 2003, Khalid el-Masri was arrested in Macedonia and then given to the CIA on the suspicion that he was involved in the 9/11 terrorist attacks. He endured a living hell in 2 different brutal CIA detention sites where he was beaten, tortured over the course of several months. Why? Because Khalid el-Masri had a very similar name to Khalid al-Masri and was detained after one of history's most unfortunate cases of mistaken identity. The subsequent court battle in the European Court of Human Rights marks the first time that the activities of the CIA have been legally declared torture. Fact 7. Did you know there is a hyper-secretive CIA Starbucks? Because even secret agents need caffeine, the so-called stealthy Starbucks in the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, has special rules for serving its unique clientele. They need to put the baristas through intense background checks to make sure none of them is an enemy agent eavesdropping on state secrets. This is also the only Starbucks where they do not do reward cards or write names on the cups, given some agents may not be at liberty to share that information. Fact 8. Did you know the CIA had an arms dealer on their payroll? Edwin Wilson was arrested.
Nobody's shocked. Like, you can't honestly tell me that you're shocked that the CIA has arms dealers on the payroll.
in 1983 for selling 20 tons of plastic explosives to Libya in what was at the time the biggest illegal weapons deal in recorded history. Wilson had retired from the CIA officially in 1971, and when the deal came to light, the CIA washed its hands of him. However, Edwin worked tirelessly to reveal that he'd still been working as a contractor, obtaining information and running front businesses for the intelligence agency during the time he was arrested. While he was never directly asked to make a deal with Libya, it may have still fallen under the purview of information-gathering activities. He was released in prison in 2003 in light of this and was quoted saying, "I was doing it for them. If they hadn't walked away from me, I wouldn't have ever been convicted."
That's dirty. So them motherfuckers would be like, all right, we done with you, bitch. We don't know you.
Fact 9. Did you know the CIA made edits to Zero Dark 30? A declassified memo shows the agency had influence over the 2012 biopic about the hunt for Osama bin Laden. They wanted to make sure they were presented in a positive light by demanding changes such as making the protagonist an observer rather than a participant in a waterboarding scene, removing a scene where vicious dogs are used to interrogate a prisoner, and also excising a scene where agents party with AK-47s on a rooftop.
And that's crazy because you want to control the media's narrative of you. Why not just stop doing this shit?
Fact 10. The CIA also cut references to torture in Meet the Parents. In this forgettable franchise-spawning 2000s comedy, Ben Stiller.
First of all, you're not going to talk about Meet the Parents in a negative way. Ben Stiller and Robert fucking De Niro created a fucking everlasting history of a beautiful work of art that we call Meet the Parents and Meet the Fockers. How dare you ever disrespect Ben Stiller and Robert motherfucking De Niro, the kingpin, Mr. motherfucking Bronxdale himself, you piece of shit.
Finds out his future father-in-law, played by Robert De Niro, is a hard-ass ex-CIA special agent. In the original draft of the movie, this is discovered when Stiller's character finds a torture manual in De Niro's personal effects.
Hey,
the CIA made them.
If you've never seen the movie Meet the Fockers or Meet the Parents, bro, go check that shit out ASAP. That's the funniest shit you'll ever watch.
And cut this from the movie and instead replaced it with Stiller finding a series of pictures showing De Niro with several famous politicians. Shame. The CIA could have earned some positive PR just by cutting the entire movie. Fact 11. It isn't just movies. The CIA has been caught editing Wikipedia. In what might have been a violation of the website's conflict of interest rules, CIA computers were found to have been making alterations to articles about the Iraq War, Guantanamo Bay, and the profiles of former agents, among other diverse topics. Some of the most concerning edits have involved removing certain pictures from the Guantanamo article and muddying the waters of death statistics in previous conflicts in which they were involved. That's a little shady there, guys. Fact 12.
Shocked? Who? Raise your hand if you're shocked.
They teamed up with people from Hasbro to make a demonic Bin Laden action figure. No, this isn't a rejected plotline from American Dad. It was part of a 2005-2006 PSYOP campaign known as Devil Eyes, where they worked with former Hasbro exec Donald Levine, one of the major architects of the G.I. Joe toy franchise, to make and distribute action figures of Osama bin Laden among South Asian youth, particularly in Afghanistan and Pakistan. But like all the best.
That's funny. That is funny. Now I have to see something. This whole area has been a torment, being tormented by the CIA for a while. What is it about this area of Asia that they hate? Is it that they hate so much?
best action figures, it came with a twist. Over time, the face of the action figure would peel away and reveal a demonic stare underneath, which the CIA hoped would make people change their minds about supporting Al-Qaeda. Opinions are split on whether more than 3 prototypes were ever made, but we can probably all agree that a demonic action figure likely would not have brought a powerful terrorist group to its knees. Sorry, Mr. Levine. Fact 13. The CIA bribed some Afghan tribal chiefs with Viagra. In Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, the CIA needs to be careful with its choice of confidential informants, and even more careful about how they pay them. Monetary gifts often draw too much attention from the Taliban, and gifts of weapons often end up in the wrong hands. That's why the CIA has gotten more creative with the gifts they give to many warlords and tribal elders who give them a steady supply of information about the region. These have included toys, medicine, clothes, and yes, Viagra, which reignited the sex life of one older tribal patriarch. Good for him. Fact 14. The CIA
That boy out there trading in wars, trading in motherfucking nation secrets for some pussy.
tormented prisoners with Barney the Purple Dinosaur. In a process disturbingly described as torture light, Iraqi prisoners have been interrogated by the CIA by being locked in an enclosed room and being bombarded with a variety of songs at ear-splitting volumes, referred to by one prisoner as the disco. The playlist at this nightmarish disco includes, among others, Metallica's Enter Sandman, Queen's We Are the Champions, and I Love You by Barney the Purple Dinosaur.
Wow.
James Hetfield, Metallica's co-founder,
That's dirty. That's dirty.
bothered by his music being used in torture. He said, "We've been punishing our parents, our wives, our loved ones with this music forever. Why should the Iraqis be any different? We're still waiting on an official comment."
Hey, that's the funniest response to somebody saying that your music is torturous. Man, look, dog, we've been doing this to our family for a long time, bro. Give a fuck. Why the fuck should they, you motherfuckers, have to worry about it not being subjugated to this shit that we've been torturing our fucking family with?
From Barney. Fact 15. The CIA tried to use the power of the mind to escape space-time. This consciousness-altering series of experiments was known as the Gateway Process, and it theorized in a highly simplified sense that certain kinds of audio stimulation could alter the mind. What kinds of effects would these alterations offer the CIA? Nothing much really, aside from gaining an
That's funny because I actually started writing a book about 2 years ago about using time travel, using the brain waves, time travel.
intuitive knowledge of the universe and an ability to commune with extra-dimensional beings outside of space-time. Given the CIA doesn't,
And there's a motherfucker in the past who came to the future and gave me that idea.
as far as we know, have agents like Glorbo the Immaculate from Dimension X on the payroll, this plan didn't bear much fruit. These days, it's just another form of viral hippie pseudoscience on TikTok. Fact 16. The CIA had the Dalai Lama on its payroll. This one was just a conspiracy theory for the longest time, until access to certain CIA intelligence bank accounts revealed that the CIA had been giving the Tibetan spiritual leader a generous $180,000 yearly stipend in the 1960s to help fan the flames of the Tibetan exodus and weaken China's potential for expansion during the Cold War.
Dang.
Maybe next we'll find out they really do have Glorbo the Immaculate. Fact 17. During the Cold War, the CIA and MI6 built a giant spy tunnel under Berlin. In one of the most ambitious espionage operations of all time, Operation Gold was an impressive sequel to Operation Silver in Vienna. The goal was to tap into Russian landline communications in Soviet-occupied Berlin by building a huge spy tunnel under the city, which took 8 months from its start date in 1954. But there's a twist. The Soviets knew about it the whole time, thanks to George Blake, a double agent in MI6. They kept their knowledge under wraps until 1956 to avoid exposing a valuable mole. Fact 18. The CIA figured out how to turn sex dolls into spy tools. During the 1970s, CIA spies in Moscow needed a quick distraction when they were being pursued by Soviet counterspies. One proposed idea was known as the Jack-in-the-Box, or the Jib, inspired by inflatable sex dolls. It would be a small device that upon the press of a button would essentially inflate a fake agent to momentarily confuse the pursuer. Get smart, eat your heart out. Fact 19.
Man, what?
1970s, CIA spies in Moscow needed a quick distraction when they were being pursued by Soviet counterspies. One proposed idea was known as the Jack-in-the-Box, or the Jib, inspired by inflatable sex dolls. It would be a small device that upon the press of a button would essentially inflate a fake agent to momentarily confuse the pursuer. Get smart, eat your heart out. Fact 19. Time for a CIA versus Castro lightning round. There were over 600 unsuccessful attempts on the Cuban leader's life, and many of them were performed by the CIA. But don't worry,
I'm still stuck on how they was out there throwing jack-in-the-box at people.
they had some very helpful advice from
like
seasoned
Mario
murderer
Kart.
professionals like mobsters Sam Giancarlo, Santos Traficant, and Carlos Marcello. They recommended that the CIA take out Castro with poisoned pills slipped into the ice cream of his favorite milkshake, because Sam, Santos, and Carlos seemed to be almost comically evil movie mobsters. Diabolical as it seemed, though, this attempt did not succeed in putting Castro out of commission. But none of the three mobsters would survive to the 2000s, so Castro had the last laugh. Fact 20. When poison ice cream failed, the CIA tried poisoned cigars. Some of Castro's favorite Cubans, the cigars, not the citizens, were spiked with botulinum toxin and delivered to an anonymous assassin in 1961, but it's unclear what happened after that.
If you don't know what botulinum toxin is, that's Botox. So they were spiking Botox.
So it's very possible that a random innocent person or people ended up getting smoked by their smokes. Fact 21.
That shit's
The
crazy,
CIA
bro.
also tried to kill Castro with an exploding seashell. Castro loved scuba diving, so in '63 the CIA floated the idea of finding and painting a particularly magnificent shell and planting it where Castro would dive. The plan was to implant an explosive into the shell and detonate it when El Comandante was in close proximity. Obviously, this didn't work. And it wasn't even the only scuba-related assassination attempt against Castro. The CIA also tried to bump Castro off, or at least
Man, they have ass like every 3 seconds, don't they? God damn.
by giving him a diving suit and breathing apparatus infected with a deadly fungus. Fact 22. The CIA also tried to get one of Castro's lovers to kill him on their behalf. Marita Lorenz, who was involved with Castro in 1959, claims the CIA tried to make her a professional femme fatale, giving her some poisoned pills to sneak into Castro's drink. But the plan was another disaster. She stored the pills in a cold cream jar, rendering them unusable. Castro also figured out the plan and held Lorenz at gunpoint, saying, "You can't kill me. Nobody can kill me." Then they apparently made love, because that's just the kind of guy Castro was. Fact:
Hey, that's the real shit.
she stored the pills in a cold cream jar, rendering them unusable. Castro also figured out the plan and held Lorenz at gunpoint, saying, "You can't kill me. Nobody can kill me." Then they apparently made love, because that's just the kind of guy Castro was. Fact 23. When the CIA couldn't kill him, they settled for trying to make Castro look completely insane. When Castro was scheduled to give a speech to the Cuban people over the radio, the CIA hoped to dose him with LSD, which could cause severe hallucinations and make him give a bizarre and incoherent speech. This plan never came to fruition because the LSD compound they hoped to use proved to be too unstable. And believe us when we tell you, as you'll find out later in this video, this doesn't even break the top 20 most insane things the CIA has done with LSD. Fact 24. The CIA also tried to assassinate Castro's beard. In perhaps the greatest sign that the CIA was clutching at straws with some of these attempts, someone in the CIA Castro Assassination Brain Trust suggested dusting the man's shoes with thallium, a poison that would cause his iconic beard to fall out. Once again, the plan failed, and Castro took his mighty beard to the grave with him in 2016. Fact 25. The CIA may have gotten people killed with pizza. Specifically, we're talking about one of the most terrible code words of all time. Back in 2011, a group of CIA informants was rumbled by Hezbollah in Beirut after they used the code word pizza to describe a secret intelligence meeting at a Pizza Hut. While an anonymous U.S. official denies that the meeting happened in an actual Pizza Hut, retired CIA official Robert Baer was quoted as saying, "If they were genuine spies spying against Hezbollah, I don't think we'd ever see them again." Yikes. Fact 26. The
Damn.
CIA tried to weaponize a sex tape. We know that sex dolls were not out of the question for Cold War espionage, but both the CIA and the KGB wanted to use sex tapes as kompromat against extremely popular Indonesian president Sukarno. Some reports
That shit wouldn't work nowadays. Motherfuckers be dropping that shit and be getting deals.
even allege that the CIA did this by using a performer in an incredibly realistic rubber Sukarno mask. This plot was a failure, however, and possibly for an extremely funny reason. Some reports indicate that Sukarno was strangely flattered by the sex tapes and asked the CIA and KGB to send him some copies. You can't blackmail a man who's immune to shame. Fact 27.
He like, you out there showing videos of me getting some pussy? Man, show me that shit. In fact, make some more and then send me some too.
CIA was a patron of abstract art. During the early 1950s, the CIA pursued any angles of resistance against the Soviets that they could find, and one of these was promoting American ideals through art. To this end, the CIA helped fund gallery showings of abstract art from figures like Jackson Pollock and Willem de Kooning across the world. The abstract ideals of a patron of abstract and who's immune to shame. Fact 27. The CIA was a patron of abstract art. During the early 1950s, the CIA pursued any angles of resistance against the Soviets that they could find, and one of these was promoting American ideals through art. To this end, the CIA helped fund gallery showings of abstract art from figures like Jackson Pollock and Willem de Kooning across the world. Their logic was that such art could never be produced under a communist state where free thought is suppressed, so by promoting this art, they were promoting the American ideal. We don't know if this actually achieved its intended purpose, but it's nice to know that at least some CIA money went to funding the arts rather than haphazard attempts to take on Cuba. Speaking of which, fact 28. The CIA had a plan to blame Cuba if America's space missions failed. In a subdivision of Operation Northwoods, literally called Operation...
Why the fuck do they hate Cuba so much, bro? I get it. I get all the, you know what I mean, all the shit that Fidel, you know what I'm saying, may or may not have done. Y'all wasn't there. I can't speak on that man's behalf, and I can't speak for other people because I wasn't there. But I will say this. They won't leave that man alone to where they start blaming him for everything, bro. Like 4 or 5 fucking secrets ago. Like 4 or 5 fucking secrets ago. They were just explaining what's up with it, Cortez. I appreciate you for being here, fam. They were just explaining how they tried, like, for 4 secrets in a row, they tried to get rid of Fidel, make his beard fall off, make him look crazy. They tried to poison him. That poison didn't work because he ended up fucking the bitch that they had trying to poison him. He had her at gunpoint. You can't kill me. Nobody can. Now give me some pussy. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it's... Just leave this man alone, man.
Operation Dirty Trick because the CIA seemingly isn't big on irony. The John Glenn Mercury space mission in 1962 had a plan to blame it all on Cuba if the astronaut ended up dying in space. The plan stated their intention to, quote, provide irrevocable proof that should the Mercury manned orbit flight fail, the fault lines with the communists et al. Cuba by manufacturing various pieces of evidence.
Looking for an easy...
Man, these motherfuckers these fucking ass, bro. He got ass going.
Of electronic interference on the part of the Cubans, unquote. Thankfully, John Glenn returned to Earth safely, so this shockingly petty plan didn't see the light of day until decades later. Fact 29. The CIA faked a vampire attack in the Philippines. As part of their plan to crush the Huk Rebellion in the Philippines in the early 1950s, they brought in Psy-War expert and mythology enthusiast Edward Lansdale, who had...
While we know the CIA has done some evil, sadistic shit, they've done some wild, funny shit. Like, sometimes they do some borderline dementia type shit. You know what I'm saying?
Had a unique plan for clearing a particularly difficult Huk fort. He used his knowledge of a local myth to fake the attack of an aswang, a frightening Filipino vampire, by puncturing the neck of a Huk rebel and bleeding him dry. It was a truly horrific method, but it was effective. The Huk fort was rattled and soon cleared when word spread of the potential aswang attack, proving that the CIA can often come in clutch with the scariest idea you've ever heard. Fact 30. The CIA tried to create a weaponized weather machine. During the Vietnam War, Operation Sober Popeye was the CIA.
Now, we're hearing this in the, comedic form. You see the animations. But I want you to take in consideration everything that these facts are, these secrets are about. They created a way to cloud seed. They understood cloud seeding. So when we hear people talking about chemtrails, and manipulating the weather. This is why they say that, because they were
CIA's plan to seed clouds and extend Vietnam's natural monsoon season to wage a weatherized war of attrition against their jungle commando enemies. But this plan was scuppered in 1978 when international courts declared the use of weather-manipulating devices in warfare as a war crime. Though in fairness, things being a war crime has never stopped the CIA before. They've been known to do some truly horrifying things to their own people, such as Fact 31, the CIA's horrifying mind control experiments, MK Ultra. That's
if you're not familiar with the mind control experiments, we're talking about remote viewers and stuff like that, where they were understanding of the universe and the frequencies. They had people who were giving them, when they met up with Dalai Lama and different monks and different people from different areas who understood spirituality and frequencies, they started using things. So the things that we've seen the CIA been exposed about, it was time travel. We've seen them with heart attack guns that induce that create heart attacks. People die. We've seen them. Well, you're about to see what they're about to do right here with astral projection and etc. Like, it's like they do a lot of crazy shit, man.
That's right, time for an MK Ultra lightning round. This brainchild of chemist spymaster Sidney Gottlieb is one of the most infamous things the CIA has ever done. The experiments ran from 1953 to 1973 and primarily involved explorations into the interrogation and mind control applications of LSD, as well as MDMA, heroin, mescaline, barbiturates, meth, and magic mushrooms. And you'd be amazed at the level of mind-boggling insanity Sidney Gottlieb and his associates managed to fit into those 20 years of testing. Fact 32. The CIA hired Nazi war criminals from the Dachau concentration camp to help with MK Ultra. Vivisectionists and war criminals who worked for both the Nazis and Japan's infamous Unit 731 were brought to Fort Detrick in Maryland to lecture CIA agents on their findings. The Dachau staff were of particular interest due to their experiments on concentration camp prisoners using mescaline, and some of the experiments conducted under the MK Ultra banner were even modeled after Nazi methodology. Fact 33. There were allegedly CIA sites across the globe where these experiments were being conducted. There's evidence of MK Ultra experiments being undertaken throughout Europe and Asia, where unwitting enemies of the state were subjected to extreme experimentation without the same legal entanglements the CIA would face experimenting on American soil.
You know what's really crazy though, Cortez? The fact that all this stuff actually happened. It's not like we're saying maybe it did, maybe it didn't. You know what I'm saying? And again, the animations make it look less dramatic and take away from the actual effects of
The
it.
purpose of these experiments was the destruction of the human ego through drugging,
Ladies and gentlemen,
So even with them trying to minimize it, or it looking like it's minimalized, and it's easy to it's more palatable because it's an animation form. But
isolation,
the stuff they were
temperature
doing,
control, and psychological drugging,
wow.
electroshock therapy, isolation, temperature control, and psychological torture. The purpose was to essentially render the mind a blank slate, where Gottlieb and his co-conspirators could build whatever they pleased. Fact 34. Some nightmarish experiments unfolded in Canada under MK Ultra. The Allen Memorial Institute, under the direction of Scottish psychiatrist Donald Ewan Cameron, played host to the Montreal experiments, which were funded by the CIA front organization, the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. Some of these experiments involved shocking drugged patients with significantly more power than typical electroshock therapy, while others involved inducing months-long comas, while the subjects were forced to listen to looping audio tapes. Some people subjected to Cameron's experiments effectively lost their minds, entering an infantile state where they experienced symptoms like urinary incontinence, severe amnesia, and even the belief that the researchers were their parents. Fact 35.
Wow.
Gottlieb and the CIA director.
That's wild. Like, that's wild. Like, that's wild.
While the subjects were forced to listen to looping audio tapes. Some people subjected to Cameron's experiments effectively lost their minds, entering an infantile state where they experienced symptoms like urinary incontinence, severe amnesia, and even the belief that the researchers were their parents. Fact 35.
That's crazy.
Gottlieb and the CIA director tried to destroy evidence of MKUltra. In 1973, in one of the few good decisions of President Richard Nixon, he removed Richard Helms as director of the CIA. Helms was one of the greatest supporters of Sidney Gottlieb's continued research, so with him out, MKUltra's days were thankfully numbered. Knowing that they'd committed a lot of horrific violations of both the law and general ethics, Helms and Gottlieb conspired to eliminate as much evidence of MKUltra as they possibly could. Gottlieb even loaded boxes of files from the CIA archive into his car and instructed them to be destroyed, but Helms and Gottlieb missed files that were stored elsewhere. As a result, the existence of MKUltra was revealed to the world 2 years later, in 1975, by Senator Frank Church, in the very same committee hearings where he debuted the heart attack pistol. This would...
And that's crazy. Like when you hear people talk about conspiracies, or what we call conspiracies, they're only called conspiracies because A, you've been told that shit's not real. B, because we didn't have the during those time periods we didn't have access to the information as we do now. So we didn't a lot of people couldn't just push through social media because there wasn't no social media for us.
Only result in more horrifying discoveries about the
That's
project.
craziness.
Fact 36. MKUltra killed a tennis player. Many people lost their lives and minds to MKUltra, but one of the strangest ones is the tragic case of Harold Blauer. This unfortunate professional tennis player checked into New York State Psychiatric Institute in 1952 due to suffering from a bout of depression following his divorce. There, he became a lab rat for the Army Chemical Corps under the MKUltra umbrella. He was injected with various chemical analogs from mescaline throughout his stay, experiencing severe hallucinations. Eventually, he was given an overdose of the chemical 3,4-methylene dioxyamphetamine, also known as MDA, which caused him to slip into a coma and die later that day. The CIA and the...
Man, if you don't know what MDMA is, that's Molly. They gave that boy some Molly and made him overdose of Molly.
State of New York covered this up for 22
That's
years
crazy.
until the revelations eventually came out during committee hearings. But it wasn't just innocent tennis players who became unwitting guinea pigs. Fact 37. The CIA performed MKUltra experiments on infamous gangster Whitey Bulger. While imprisoned for his extensive life of crime,
I didn't know that.
Bulger was coerced into MKUltra experiments that he was told were research for the benefit of mental health. He and other inmates were given drug cocktails and were subjected to batteries of the typical strange and unethical tests. But this is particularly interesting because Bulger was able to describe his own experience in the program firsthand. Quote, 8 convicts in a panic and paranoid state, total loss of appetite, hallucinating. The room would change shape, hours of paranoia and feeling violent. We experienced horrible periods of living nightmares and even blood coming out of the walls, guys turning into skeletons in front of me. I saw a camera change into the head of a dog. I felt like I was going insane. It definitely doesn't sound like a good trip, but we can think of a worse one. Fact 38. The CIA performed experiments on unwitting brothel patrons. No, you did not hear that wrong. It was part of an MKUltra subdivision known as Operation Midnight
fucked
Climax. Primarily operated by ex-narcotics investigator George White, the CIA rigged certain rooms and...
I'm gonna tell you what I noticed about the CIA. They don't like motherfuckers getting pussy. Like, they really don't like motherfuckers getting pussy, bro. I don't like
with
that.
surveillance equipment and
I don't like that
recruited
about
sex
them.
workers to bring their clients there and dose them with LSD for observation. The women were paid in both small cash tokens and immunity from prosecution for their sex work. And George White would later say that he enjoyed this work mainly because he liked getting to spy on people having sex while drugged. In his own words, I toiled wholeheartedly in the vineyards because it was fun, fun, fun. Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest? It seemed
This is what I'm saying. You give motherfucking sociopaths.
that pretty much everyone involved in
Access
this
and
project
control.
was a massive weirdo. Fact 39. The MKUltra experiments inspired Stranger Things. In the hit Netflix show, Eleven has psychic powers because of her mother being an experimental subject of the MKUltra experiments. And the show's creators, the Duffer Brothers, have said multiple times that the experiments were one of the major inspirations behind the government conspiracy side of the show, along with the conspiratorial Project Montauk. The CIA never encountered a real psychic little girl or a demogorgon during their experiences, mainly just huge amounts of horrific malpractice. Fact 40. The CIA tried to control the news. Operation Mockingbird was the pet project of Frank Wisner, head of the
You can't say they try to control the news, because even to this day, they control the news. If you don't believe me, when this is over, I'll show you a video loop of every news outlet at the exact same time across the country saying the exact same thing.
CIA's Office of Special Projects to get a stranglehold over the American print media and broadcasting during the early years of the Cold War. He gained influence over key figures in the New York Times, CBS, and members of the Washington Press Corps, allegedly having 3,000 CIA employees embedded throughout major news organizations at the height of the project. These employees suppressed certain stories and planted others, making sure the media narrative could be massaged in the interests of the CIA. So when you watch the news, you never really know what message you're receiving. Fact 41. They tried using poisoned toothpaste to kill a Congolese prime minister. Patrice Lumumba oversaw the Democratic Republic of the Congo split from Belgian rule in 1960, leading to the CIA to worry he'd drag the country toward communism, mainly due to Lumumba's anti-colonial policies and his desire to preserve his country's independence. Of course, the Congo also contained mineral deposits sought after by both the US and Belgium, so the CIA drew up plans to assassinate Lumumba and install someone more sympathetic to American interests in his place.
Crazy.
There were many plots to kill Lumumba, with the strangest being an attempt to poison his toothpaste, which was quickly discarded by the recruit they'd put in charge of carrying it out. The CIA still got what they wanted in the end, as Lumumba was eventually captured and executed by Katangan separatists. To this day, he's seen as a martyr by the people of the Pan-African movement for his fearless adherence to his principles, even in the face of death.
That's
Fact
what's up.
42. They used a fake vaccine plot to help catch bin Laden. As part of their ongoing quest to find Osama bin Laden, the architect of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the CIA set up a fake hepatitis vaccination scheme in the neighborhood of bin Laden's compound as a front to investigate the area and possibly collect a DNA sample confirming the presence of one of his many children. This method was strongly condemned by Uni Karunakara, the international president of the nonprofit Doctors Without Borders, who claimed it would encourage distrust between citizens and medical professionals, saying, "The risk is that vulnerable communities anywhere needing access to essential health services will understandably question the true motivation of medical workers and humanitarian aid." Fact 43. The CIA reads 5 million tweets per day. Just in case you need to feel better about your own potential Twitter addiction, the CIA has reported that it studies 5 million different tweets in a variety of languages to assess the mood of different areas in the aftermath of major foreign policy decisions. For example, in the aftermath of bin Laden's assassination, the Open Source Center was wired into the collective reaction of the Middle East Twitter's feelings on that matter. We would hate to be one of the many employees tasked with wading through the Twitterscape every day, whether for general impressions or actionable intelligence. Fact 44. They had a manual on deception written by a master magician. John E. McLaughlin, former deputy director of the CIA, once said magic and intelligence are really kindred arts. This must be why they hired magician John Mulholland to write a handbook on deception and trickery for $3,000 in 1953. It was just another one of the many insane documents created under the MKUltra banner and was thought to have been destroyed in 1973 until two agents realized they happened to still have copies. It was full of handy little tips, like the fact that agents who look dopey or disheveled are less likely to be noticed, how secret pockets are perfect for hiding weapons or documents, and how you can smuggle yourself out of a building inside a crate. Useful stuff, really. Fact 45. The CIA is less than a century old, despite having an insanely storied history.
Like, these motherfuckers, man, this is craziness. Like, they really go above and beyond. But it's
Day wasn't
I'm gonna tell you something, and I'm gonna say this in the most honest way possible. For it to be so many things that they did fucked up, it makes me wonder how many things they actually stopped.
created until 1947, though it had a few
much help did
precursor
they
organizations,
actually lose?
including the Office of the Coordinator of Information, the Office of Strategic Services, the Strategic Services Unit, and the Central Intelligence Group, in that order. Fact 46. They kept a bizarre list of Soviet jokes for the deputy director. We don't have much of an explanation for this one. It could have been for the deputy director's personal use or some kind of social function, but we will share one of the jokes from the official CIA Soviet joke list here. What's the difference between Gorbachev and Dubček? Nothing, but Gorbachev doesn't know it yet. We guess you had to be there. Fact 47. The CIA armed Islamic extremists in the Iran-Contra affair. It's probably the most famous CIA scandal of all time. The CIA facilitated the illegal sale of arms to Iran, which was subject to an arms embargo at the time. Why? Because they were hoping to use the proceeds to fund the Contras, a gang of anti-Sandinista rebels in Nicaragua. It's considered one of the biggest embarrassments of the Reagan administration. Fact 48. They are alleged to have helped depose an Australian Prime Minister. Gough Whitlam, an Australian Prime Minister from 1972 to 1975, made enemies of both MI6 and the CIA when he strove to make Australia a more independent nation from the British and the United States, even threatening to shut down a CIA base in Pine Gap. While opinions are divided on the issue, it's believed by many that the CIA influenced Governor General Sir John Kerr to dismiss Whitlam from the position of Prime Minister and place a politician from the opposition who was far more sympathetic to the CIA's interests in his place. This resulted in the 1975 Australian constitutional crisis, one of Australia's most controversial political incidents. To this day, both the CIA and Kerr deny any collusion took place. Fact 49. The CIA has a kill list, maintained by the Counterterrorism Center or CTC. This list of individuals is the top priority for assassination under the CIA's mandate. After the CIA puts the information together, the CIA's lawyers, the General Counsel, and the head of the National Clandestine Service make the determination on whether the hit will be carried out. If this raises certain questions about extrajudicial executions and the lack of a fair trial, well, you definitely wouldn't be alone on those criticisms. Fact 50. The CIA had a torture training manual titled Human Resource Exploitation Training Manual. This book of torture techniques was distributed to the Honduran military by the CIA. In what feels like an almost comical attempt at plausible deniability, the book opens with a note that says, quote, "We will discuss some of those coercive techniques that have been used by many and the reasons why we are against the use of these techniques. We do not use these techniques, nor do we condone the use of them." Unquote. It was very generous of the CIA to give Honduran militants a list of exact instructions on how to torture people just to make sure none of them did it by accident. The CIA is just very humanitarian like that. Now check out, was President JFK really killed by the CIA, or
See, with that channel, I like that. I do. But
Are you going to leave America in 2030?
I'm going to try and leave America in 2020.
let's talk about it.
America in 2030?
I'm going to try and leave
This is
America
a
in
CIA
2027.
CIA
I
spy
read that
right
somewhere.
here.
Why are you going to try and leave America in 2027?
So I think the United States is going through a very difficult time right now. And I think most people understand that. We are a young country. No matter how much we think that we are the best in the world, we are actually going through the early part of our adolescence as a nation. And you can see it playing out every day in the headlines. You can see it in our role in geopolitical events. You can see that we're suffering in terms of trying to identify ourselves. We don't know, do we want to be a real democracy? Do we want to be kind of a partial democracy? Do we want to treat everybody as equal? Do we not want to treat everybody as equal? We're struggling in the same way that you and I did through middle school, right? My children mean the world to me. And what I want to do is give them a life where they have the choice to do anything they want to do. Unfortunately, I don't believe our country for the next 5 to 10 years is going to be the kind of country that allows children of today to choose and be whatever they want to be. I think our country has some growing up of its own to do before we really offer people equal access to opportunities. So for me, if I was my 11-year-old son, when I turned 15 or 16 years old, and I start to really care about something, I would like to be in a place where I can explore that thing. I don't think that's going to be in the United States. I think that's going to be in Europe. I think that's going to be in the Middle East. I think that's going to be in Latin America, where he will have all the advantages of the world outside of the United States.
What do you think about what's going on at the moment with geopolitics as it relates to like China and the US? There's a bit of a power struggle going on, and there has been, but a lot of people forecast that China is eventually going to overtake,
That's cool, but that's not what I want to talk. What I want to go over.
So compelled by the whole idea of the CIA.
Yeah, let's see what's going on here. All right, so we're gonna check and see what this one is about. The title of the video sounded like something I needed to be.
The whole idea of the CIA, because we had someone here recently talking. We had Andrew here recently talking about what goes on at the CIA, and I think one of the things he said to me is that the role of the CIA has changed over time, and once upon a time it was more capable of doing more things. And by the way he described it, it sounded like the CIA has less powers and can do less of the things that it's been accused of in the past. I think it's been accused of killing the president here by some people, or being involved in the assassination of one of the presidents here. And does the CIA report directly into the president?
The CIA features in almost every one of my books. The most sort of comprehensive look I did at the CIA was a book called Surprise, Kill, Vanish, which is about the CIA's paramilitary. And once I reported that, I understood that there are actually two very distinct components of the CIA. There's the sort of central intelligence agency, the primary human. It's called human intelligence. And there's analysts and there's espionage. And then there's the paramilitary organization, which was set up in 1947 specifically to go against the Russian version of itself, sort of to do the darkest, dirtiest, nastiest operations that we had to because the Russians were. And so, you know, the CIA is a giant organization with a lot of tentacles. And I think it's important to speak, at least for me, having reported on many of these different programs. You know, Area 51 covers the aerial espionage element of the CIA, the science and technology. The CIA was responsible for putting the first satellite in space, the Corona program. Dr. Bud Wheelon, who I interviewed for Area 51, remarkable intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance programs. And then you have the paramilitary operators, the trigger pullers, the snake eaters, the individuals who, you know, find, fix, and finish people. That's a euphemism.
Hey, you know, that's not surprising. That's not. Some of the things that they've been proven to have done to people, to nations, to groups. I wouldn't expect anything.
Teams that do that. But I prefer to speak very specifically on programs because I find it's the most responsible or the most factual way for me to stick to a certain lane of the agency because it is so vast.
It's interesting as well because when you think about the books you've written, I think how many have you written now? 6 or 7? 7 books in total. The subject matter of your books are all the basis of a lot of conspiracy theory, if that makes sense. You know, you've written about Area 51 and this thing called Operation Paperclip and the Pentagon and now nuclear bombs and the CIA, all these kinds of things, which are the basis of many of the conspiracy theories that I hear about. So you've got a very unique perspective on the world because you've had the privilege and the access of interviewing some of the most interesting people that are closest to these very interesting subjects. What are some of the things that you've come to learn that you once thought were just conspiracy theories?
I mean, conspiracy theory is such a loaded word, and I think it's too bad that it's used as a catch-all to kind of dismiss a lot of curiosity. Because
and like I said in the first half of the video, do it. I'm a realist. You know, some people will call it quote unquote conspiracies, but that's because they don't want to. They don't want to learn the information.
Curiosity is important,
It's
right? And
laziness.
curiosity leads toward reading. I mean, I couldn't be a bigger fan of reading or listening to educating yourself. I mean, things have really changed in
Exactly.
terms of audio. Like you can listen to a podcast and learn a lot. You can listen to an audiobook the same way that you used to have to read them. And so to just call things conspiracy theories, I find to be intellectually thin. Right? It's just too easy. And it's also very self-righteous. And I think two things I always work to avoid is like kind of being a know-it-all. And I am around a lot of know-it-alls because people who become experts in subjects and maybe they don't get as much attention as they think they deserve tend to become a little bit of self-righteous know-it-alls. And so I have to wind my way through that world because what interests me are subjects that make me ask the question, why, right? Like, why does no one know about Area 51? Why is Area 51 so secret? I mean, when I wrote the book Area 51, the word Area 51 was still classified.
Really?
You couldn't say it. I went to the CIA and I was told by my minder, if you say a certain word and number, you will be asked to leave. It was classified. It only became unclassified when President Obama spoke about it publicly.
Oh, really?
He just mentioned it, and then it was unclassified, right? And so, to answer your question,
That's crazy.
I find it really interesting tackling subjects that are in the zeitgeist that people are interested in, and then trying to unpack the truths and the fictions.
But is there something you heard about? You heard a whisper about, and you thought that can't possibly be true. And then after doing a little bit of investigative researching and journalism, you discovered that it actually was true, and you were blown away. And I say that in part because I lived much of my life thinking that a lot of these subjects, Area 51, the CIA, this idea that there's all these spies and they're doing all of this stuff, and I thought a lot of it was just internet rumors and, certain people who have, they have like the silver foil on their heads and they're just like, whatever. And then I had the privilege of speaking to some people on this podcast and just out there in the world who confirmed that a lot of the things I once thought were tinfoil hat stuff is actually true.
And that's what I'm saying. Like when you spend, like growing up, I used to watch a lot of shows and movies. And they always refer to the guy who he wore aluminum foil on his head because he don't want them to read his thoughts. But we talk about remote viewers, MK Ultra. We talk about when they used to actually practice and learn about astral projecting, and the things that they did had a 67% success rate. Come on now, man, that shit's crazy.
And once you have the curtain pulled back, it kind of blows your mind open to what else could be true. And I'm a person that kind of like needs evidence and logic, and I'm not going to believe something because I saw it on like an Instagram post or a story or a Telegram community. But my mind's been blown, especially over the last couple of years, about how some of these things that people consider to be conspiracy theories are actually very true. Have you had those moments in your career?
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, you can really drill down on this stuff and figure out the thematic element of what's going on and then the specifics. And I'll give you an example. Like in Area 51, I learned about something called strategic deception, which is a CIA concept, okay? And this plays into conspiracy theories. And when you come across something, maybe having this information I'm about to tell you will help you go, okay, let me look at it in terms of these two lanes. So it goes like this. The CIA was building spy planes out at Area 51. The U-2 spy plane, which was going to spy on the Soviet Union in the 50s from above and figure out whether they were preparing for nuclear war. And the plane was built at Area 51 because no one could know about it. It flew at 70,000 feet. It was out of range of any surface-to-air missiles. I interviewed the first man who flew over the Soviet Union in a U-2, Hervey Stockman. And he took pictures with these massive CIA cameras that, came back to the agency. It was wet film, and allowed the CIA to understand what was actually going on the ground in Soviet Russia. It was photographing military bases. So the spy plane was being built, and it was so secret, like only the president knew about it. At the same time, nuclear weapons were being exploded next door, right? So Area 51, and then over at Area 23 was where the bombs were going off. And I was interviewing all the engineers who were building the spy plane. And Bob Murphy was one of the lead engineers, and he told me this story about strategic deception. So he and others would go to the ranch, that's what they called Area 51, then they'd fly back to Burbank, California, where they all lived for the weekends to be with their families. And they would take this shuttle back and forth. And one day, they went to a big party the night before, and Bob Murphy got drunk. He was not a guy who gets drunk, but he got drunk. He missed the shuttle. And he was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. I'm in trouble. And he opens the doors, how he described it to me, to go out and deal with this. And there's an FBI agent about to knock on the door. And the guy turns white as a ghost because Bob Murphy was supposed to be on that flight. So he was on the flight manifest, and it crashed into Mount Charleston on the way there, and everyone was dead. Okay. So that is just a dramatic thing to begin with, but here's how it ties up with strategic deception. The CIA learns that its aircraft full of U-2 engineers, designers, all these incredibly important people on this top secret project are dead. They just crashed into Mount Charleston. What are they going to do? How are they going to keep this secret? All the news stations are racing up to the top of the mountain to try to get to the crash site. Oh my God, the project's going to be blown open. What are we going to do? So they quickly rope off the areas. They do the damage control to the best that they can. But they're spinning, and I have all the declassified documents from that part of it, learning how worried they are. There's almost no doubt the project's going to be revealed. The U-2 program is going to be no more because once the Soviets know about it, it's off. And instead, the press comes up with a story. The press reports that it's all these atomic scientists working on this secret new weapon. They just completely make this up in essence, right? It's this new weapons project. And that's what they're all doing. Who knows who put what bug in someone's ear? Wow. And so that's the story that comes out. And the CIA is like,
okay, cool,
perfect. And the story explains that there are two kinds of strategic deception. There's cover, when you say, like Bob Murphy said to his wife, I'm just an engineer working out there on some television systems. That's cover. That was his cover. He didn't say I'm working on the U-2 spy plane. And then there's disinformation. When the press reports that the crash was full of a bunch of atomic engineers working on a secret weapons program. And those are both kinds of strategic deception. And so you begin to realize that there is a purpose behind a lot of information coming out into the public. And the CIA often uses that to its advantage. And so whenever a situation happens, you have to say to yourself, is this really what happened? Or is it covering up something else? And then, of course, you have to put your rational person hat on. And you can't just imagine what the true story might be. You have to actually find it and report it.
Does the CIA, I think in the UK it's called MI5 or MI6, MI6 I think is the equivalent. Does MI6, all of these sort of special secret service agencies around the world, do they work with the media?
That's a totally separate podcast. We could talk forever because there's history of the CIA. And I'm not an expert on foreign intelligence agencies as much as I am on the United States. But by all means, there's a long history of the CIA working with journalists, reporters, authors, to put information there. I mean, there's almost nothing that the CIA hasn't done to my eye. The question is, reporting it in the context of how that's happening. I write about in the Pentagon's Brain, if you want a little homework, and you go into the back and in the index and look up brainwashing. And there's a long story where I explain exactly how this happened in the 50s with what ultimately an element that became known as the MK Ultra program. Okay, so like MK Ultra was a real program and it had a lot of sinister components to it. Is it
Right.
everything that, you know, certain groups of people that sometimes get called conspiracy theorists say that it was? No. But there are threads of truth in it. And if you reverse engineer the brainwashing concept from the back, you will see what I'm talking about. And I think it's a very interesting story because it actually involves the head of the CIA, a guy called Alan Dulles, and his son, who got brain damaged in Korea, whom I tracked down and interviewed for that book. Spoiler alert.
If you look
All right, I appreciate it. Nobody.